Thank you very much. May I begin this afternoon? No, indeed, be not afternoon. No, it's evening time. We said 6, but we now past 6:30, so I apologize for the lateness. I'm given a list here to recognize a few individual persons. Madam Angela Finley, who I'm told is the Chief Executive Officer of the board, Chairman of the school board, Mr. Floyd Dowden, other distinguished panelists here present, my dear colleagues of the PBC ilk, friends, well-wishers, parents, members of this family. Let me begin by expressing, first of all, my great gratitude and indeed my deep personal satisfaction to see so many of you here. Indeed, the panel discussion committee, I want to express publicly and put on record my sincere thanks for what they've been doing and what they do so far to bring this event to what it is today. And you know, I can thank literally a lot of people, but I don't want to call the names now, and the list might be too long before we go into this event. But for those who have offered their encouragement, their feedback, tacit approval, support, I express a profound thank you. And to begin on the right note, if there's going to be a selection by the Oscars for the best secondary school in Grenada, I don't even think PBC would get nominated, they would get elected. And I say so not merely because of the pleasures this secondary school has brought to the sons and, of course, daughters of Grenada, abundant though these may be, and other such treasures which they have brought to this beautiful land of ours, but for the decades of long commitment to nation building and to the significant contribution to the development of education generally to this nation. I don't think that there is any one other secondary school in this trial state that can boast of producing not one, not two, but 3 prime ministers in its short historic existence. In fact, I was going to ask the question, are you proud of who you are? Are you proud of this great institution of almost miraculous achievements? That is the way it is now said I must speak. Let us give another big, lofty round of applause for the PBC. This evening's panel discussion is held under the theme PBC Education for Service to God, Family, and Country. By now, you'd realize that the operative word here is service. Service. Indeed, the Gospel of St. Mark at chapter 10, beginning at the 43rd verse, says these words: whoever wants to be great must become a servant. We serve God by serving others. Clearly, all of us know in today's world, greatness is not defined in terms of service, but in terms of, sometimes they call it the 4 Ps: power, possession, prestige, position. This institution, this PBC, has a fundamental founding Christian philosophy, where Jesus measures greatness in terms of service and not in terms of status. By extension, greatness is determined by how many people you serve and not how many people serve you. This institution has served Grenada well, has served us all well, and we continue to implore upon them that service is something we want to see. And so I don't want to take all the talk myself because I just start to get sweet and I could go on. But I want to tell you that I too want to give you the charge. I want to cover to all of us as we embark on yet another milestone, the godlike gifts of insight and understanding. We will need these two principles in the days to come and as this period unfolds. I want to tell you from the script that I've given, we would have today our panelists, Zuriel Francique, past student and teacher of Presentation College. He will be giving us a brief presentation. Sister Franca Bernardine Alexis, I saw a glimpse of her. She here? Yes, you did too far. Come up in front. Come up, let's see you. Past parent and educator, convenient for this occasion and ideal. Brother Robert Fanovich, community leader, Presentation Brothers College, St. Lucia. And indeed, one young Alec Simon, who is the current student and head boy. Is he here? Lovely. So that is the order of things to come. The chairman of the 75th Anniversary Committee, Mr. Adrian Francis, Brother Jeremiah and other members and principals present. We have a specially invited guest who ought to have been here, but because of the pandemic, Brother Paul Kins Douglas, who is listening to us, PKD, he too would present to us one of his scripts. As you know, he's one of our favorite and well-loved sons of Grenada. I don't know if the district education officer, Ms. Natasha Thomas, is here. Yes, I don't like calling people names when they're not here. When you give me a list, all man must be here. So let's leave out who in there represent everyone. So without further ado, I don't want to give all of my own charge at this level, but to put the tapestry, I want to pose before we call on Brother Zurich Francique. I think the model is to have a brief bio. One of our members of the committee will speak to the brief bio before we call on Brother Zurich Francique, past student and my friend in law, and indeed, we now call on Brother Zurich Francique.
All right, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I was tasked with introducing Mr. Zuriel Francique. Now, Zuriel Francique, LLB, LEC, is an attorney at law, a past teacher, and proud graduate of the Presentation Brothers College, class of 2009. He was admitted to practice law in Grenada in 2018 after acquiring a Bachelor of Laws degree with honors from the University of the West Indies, Cavell Campus, Barbados, and a legal education certificate at Hugh Wooding Law School in Trinidad and Tobago. Zuriel's academic and professional life has been punctuated with several notable achievements, namely being the recipient of the Award for Best Youth Parliamentarian, St. George's 2008, Principals Award from the Presentation Brothers College 2009, Class Valedictorian, Presentation Brothers College 2009, and the Richard Clettenham QC Scholarship 2016 at UWI Cavell Campus. In 2019, he was awarded the Youth in Law Award from the Ministry of Youth Development, Sport, Culture, and Arts here in Grenada. He has been involved as a youth parliamentarian, a national youth ambassador, and was a Vice Chancellor Ambassador at the UWI Cavell campus. Zuriel is a past teacher of the Presentation Brothers College. Zuriel is an associate attorney at the law office of George E.D. Klein. His areas of practice are expanding, but currently include civil litigation, property law, conveyancing, family law, and succession law. He has served as council member of the Grenada Bar Association. In his private life, Zuriel enjoys reading and socializing. He strongly believes in the scripture, and I quote, "To whom much has been given, much will be required," end of quote. Mr. Francis. Alex Simon. Alex Simon is a fifth form student at the Presentation Brothers College in Grenada. Alex attended the St. George's Anglican Junior School, also known as Heinz. Thereafter, he obtained his first choice after sitting the CPEA examination for Presentation Brothers College. Some of the accomplishments Alex attained while in PBC include performing at the top of his class in Form 4, becoming head prefect and student representative on the PBC school board, placing first in the Brain-B semifinals, and placing first in the British High Commission art competition in 2022. Outside of school, Alex enjoys devotionals, physical exercise, playing football, learning foreign languages, drawing, and painting. His aim in life is to be the man God wants him to be, for his glory, and to serve mankind to the best of his ability. Alex Simon, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Franca Alexis Bernardine was educated at the St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, from primary level to sixth form college A-level. She graduated in 1970 with a valedictorian prize of La Rosier, awarded to the person who best represented the ideals of St. Joseph's Convent. She holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry and zoology, as well as a master's degree in zoology, ethology from UWI, Mona, Jamaica, and a diploma in management from the Manitoba Institute of Management, Canada. She completed 3 years of doctoral studies at the UWI Cavell campus, but health issues necessitated a withdrawal from the program at that time. Her community involvement in her country included chairman of the Prison Review Commission, president of Grenada Netball Association, the Hospital Management Board, and the TAMCC Board, a member of the UWI Territorial Advisory Committee. She has worked in the education system of 4 countries in the region, namely Jamaica, the Bahamas, Barbados, and her home country, Grenada. She has lectured zoology at the UWI Cavell campus and at Mona, and taught biochemistry at the St. George's University, Grenada. She worked as an advisor in science and technology during the Grenada government of 1982 to 85. She departed after the collapse of the Grenada Revolution, returning years later to take up the post of Executive Director of NULO, New Life Organization, for 5 years, after which she was hired to establish and develop the UNDP Grand Safe Project Program for Adolescent Mothers, also known as PAM, giving a second opportunity to mothers to complete their education, and spent a total of 5 years. Mrs. Alexis Bernardine worked with the U.S. government for 9.5 years as Associate Peace Corps Director, Eastern Caribbean Post. While still at the Peace Corps, she was invited to become the Minister of Education and Human Resource Development for Grenada. She served as minister under the Tillman Thomas government from 2008 to 2013. She also served as senator for 10 years. In 2009, she was elected to the executive board of UNESCO in Paris and served for 4 years, being the first Grenadian to serve on the UNESCO board. During her tenure at UNESCO, she presented papers on, and I quote, Inclusive Education, Public Policies, end of quote, Geneva, November 25th, 2008, and I quote, Adult Education and Lifelong Learning, end of quote, Mexico City, 2008, among others. In 2020, she became leader of the opposition party, the National Democratic Congress. During her tenure as Minister of Education under the NDC government led by Tillman Thomas, the following achievements were recorded. Teachers' degree level education moved from 19% in 2008 to 50% in 2012. The scholarship desk was created. The J.W. Fletcher School was created to relieve the numbers at secondary school. The school book program put into place. The Caribbean Primary Assessment, CPEA, was put in place, and the Common Entrance exam removed. Technical education was reintroduced to the primary level school. Anger management and conflict resolution training was introduced for primary and secondary schools. She introduced the performing arts curriculum at CSEC level in 2011 with great grade results, and tourism education was taught by community partners. Mrs. Alexis Bernardine believes, and I quote, if you empower a child with God-given values, education, and love and support, the sky becomes the limit, end of quote. Let's put our hands together for Mrs. Franca Alexis Bernardine. Next up, Brother Robert Fanovich. Brother Robert was principal of PBC from 1992 to 2001, a graduate of the University of the West Indies in natural science with postgraduate work done in educational administration. He was a vocation director of the Presentation Brothers for over 15 years and worked in youth ministry in the Catholic Church in Grenada for over 25 years. He presently lives in St. Lucia as community leader of the Presentation Brothers, who reactivated their mission there after an absence of 7 years. He derives much joy from feeding the homeless in Castries weekly and conducting spirituality sessions for teenagers. Let's put our hands together once more for Brother Robert Fanovich. And so I think here is where I hand over back to Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yusuf, for an excellent job. Give Yusuf a big hand, man. Yusuf did. Now the panelists are going to do their presentation, and we'll begin, first of all, with the youngest of the team. One, Alex Simon, head boy, and fifth form student. Will you please grace us with your presence, Mr. Simon, to do your presentation?
Good evening. On this momentous occasion, I am privileged to spend and celebrate 75 years, 902 months, 3,922 weeks, 27,454 calendar days with the PVC. My name is Alex Simon, and I'm head boy. And today, this evening, I want to talk about my past experience and how a PBC education helped me to develop as a student. Now, firstly, the first thing PBC helped me to do is to develop a concept of personal studies. Back in CP, when I did CPEA, I didn't really understand what it means to study for myself or just have a self-individual personal study. The only time I used to study is like when my parents tell me or something like that. But when you're here at PBC and you see exam time come, men start competing to see who come in top 5 in class. There's a certain academic standard you don't want to be left behind. And that really pushed me to realize that I really need to work harder. I really need to push. So when the teachers introduced for the first time personal studies, I took a while to implement it into my daily routine. But when I implemented it into my daily routine, I realized that for the first time in my academic life, studying for myself actually works. And in Form 4, when I implemented it, that's when I came first with the highest average of 92.5%. And that's one of the ways PBC really helped me by showing me how personal studies matter. Secondly, one of the ways PBC helped me to develop as a student is by true discipline showing me that there's consequences for my action. Now, every school have, the set of boys who disobey and troublemakers and stuff like that. And the thing I see, I don't want to be biased here, but the thing I see different in PBC is how we handle troublemakers. When somebody do something wrong, like you have a fight or something like that, and assembly time come, people know Mr. Jeremiah start calling out the names of the boys who get in trouble. So that's when people, they heart beating, they starting to sweat and shake and think they don't want to get called. So that really showed that we don't really, in some neighborhoods and some, societies these days praise people like gangsters because they look cool for doing bad. But here at PBC, we really single them out as the troublemakers. So when Mr. Jeremiah call out those boys, we don't want to get called out like that. So, we're starting to behave and things. And that's really one way I find PBC is different. We call out and we discipline, showing people right from wrong. And that reminds me of a time when I was in Form 2, and little immature me wanted to prove to my friends at school and thing. So I decided to disrespect a prefect. And when I could never forget this. When I disrespected the prefect, he grabbed me and he held me outside of the class. He didn't damage me or anything, but he grabbed me. He was bringing me to the office, and then I was laughing because I didn't want it to look embarrassed. But as soon as we reached by the TD room, by the step to go down in the office, I started telling him, sorry, because I'm afraid to get in trouble. And he harshly, told me what I did wrong, and he forgave me. He didn't bring me to the office to get licks, but he showed me where I went wrong, and he wanted me not to do it again. And one of the things I see change in me is that I went from disrespecting prefects to becoming head prefect of the whole student. So I really, throughout the course, through discipline, PBC has shown me, what is right from wrong. And last thing I want to talk about, as I pondered how PBC contribute to me, another question came up in my mind, like how PBC contribute to the rest of my peers. So I started asking questions, how PBC contribute to them. And the responses really shocked me. One boy told me that the teachers here at PBC have a particular interest in the students. So if a teacher see you looking a little sad, she will say, hey, how you quiet so today? Or, hey, what's wrong? And they have a particular interest that you don't really find everywhere in this world. And one more student told me that he didn't have a father, but one of his PVC teachers is like a father to him, is like a, and that really, showed me like, PBC is not just an institute where we just teach you knowledge to make high grades, but as the vision statement says, is studying the holistic development of the student. So that's the three things that PBC contributed to my student development. One, it introduced me to personal studies. Two, it showed me right from wrong and showed me that there's consequences for my actions. And three, it really not only impacted me, but impacted all my peers so that we could become greater men in society. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. A lot of what Alex said really bring back memories, but I wouldn't say it now because I wouldn't steal from the match. And of course, I needn't summarize what Alex said. I think he was to the point. There are three essential points that he has made, and all of this really is a facet of the PBC, because the education, as we indicated, is not just merely training people to go and pass studies and so on. Education has to be relevant and it has to be quality education. What I think Alex has indicated that he is in an institution where he is internalizing quality education. And I think, again, that really is outstanding. Whether it is personal studies development, right and wrong, the morals, and of course, it seeped down to his other colleagues, friends, and peers. Without further ado, I would now call on Mr. Zuril Francique, who is a past student and, of course, a past teacher. So he has a good combination of the two ends to listen to. Let's hear him.
Good evening, everyone. It is commonly said that a quality education has the power to change a life, a community, and even the planet. And in this context, we are referring to Grenada. From today's event, it is evident that Presentation Brothers College shares in that same ideology, and I am honored to be part of the 75th anniversary celebrating PBC's contribution to nation building. My presentation takes us on a short journey. We will first venture into what my experience at PBC was as a student. Then we will visit what my experience was as a teacher. And lastly, we will explore how those two experiences, both as a student and a teacher, has influenced the trajectory of my life. Presentation Brothers College, while I was a student, instilled in me the education about God and faith. PBC had the culture of communal prayer in the morning, in the afternoon, and at the end of the day. The frequency of prayers connected me to the higher purpose of life and the holistic aspect of development. One particular example, when I started PBC in 2004, it was the year of Ivan. I just got one day of school at PBC on Old Fort Road before Ivan came Tuesday, September 7th, 2004. For the next 2 years, I was housed along with my other colleagues at the J.W. Fletcher Memorial School. And it was our daily prayers and faith that allowed us to be reconnected with the bigger school in 2006 when I started Form 3. PBC education fostered my leadership skills and prepared me for service to community. The pursuit of wisdom is evident in the school's motto that is translated into virtue and knowledge. We were encouraged through the school song, particularly the chorus. Grenada's boys are we, its leaders yet will be. Grenada's faithful sons are we. Its leaders we must be. And we were always reminded of the responsibility to be leaders in our schools, in our homes, in our communities, and particularly our churches. When I was a student, I was involved in the Grenada inaugural intersecondary school debates, RBTT Young Leaders. I even tried to dabble at playing the saxophone when the school was just attempting at creating a band. Being involved in these activities taught me to be a collaborative thinker, the importance of time management, self-discipline, teamwork, all of which are valuable attributes of a leader. Mr. Jeremiah constantly reminded us to do things the PBC way. I still do not have an explicit definition of what that phrase means, but I equate that phrase with the word excellence. PBC boys do everything with excellence, and anything other than excellence, it is not the PBC way. And therefore, in my latter years of being a PBC student, it became a brand to me. PBC became a brand. I felt proud to be a PBC boy, or one of the boys on the hill, as the saying goes. A brand that is recognized in excellence in education and worthy to teach a generation of leaders. PBC taught me the appreciation for family. Most importantly, PBC taught me that the school was my family, and they contributed to molding me. I came from a single-parent household with the absence of a male figure in my household. Mr. Jeremiah, as well as other male teachers or teachers, intentionally and unintentionally molded my current definition of what it is to be a man or manhood. It has created my definition that a man is one who is honest. He must possess integrity. He must be a leader. He must be able to admit his wrongdoing and, most importantly, face the consequences of his actions. It is amazing to know that I have left nearly, 10 years ago, and Alex Simon is still able to make mention of that theme, that I have to face the consequences of my actions. And here it is that now we transition into my role as a teacher. In 2011, I returned to Presentation Brothers College as a teacher. And the transition from student to teacher was extremely smooth. The staff was like a family. They were welcoming and they were very helpful. As a teacher, I was now able to see PBC from an institutional perspective and how the school were preparing young men to serve their community. Now, there were two noteworthy concepts. You must have a mission and you must be situationally aware. Mr. Jeremiah was very instrumental in the smooth operations of the institution. I recall Mr. Jeremiah's emphasis on all teachers knowing the mission statement of the school. And we would say it, through a caring and professional environment, PBC will meet and exceed the expectation of all stakeholders in fostering creativity, self-discipline, critical thinking, and sound Christian principles, and excellence in its students. Now, this mission statement is what became the yardstick for how I internally measured myself and the performance of my duties, my interactions with both students and colleagues alike. And it provided a common goal that we all work towards. Another concept that remained to me to this day is being situationally aware. You must be observant. You must always know what's happening around you. And you must always see the big picture. And this has allowed me at every given opportunity to be a positive role model for other young men, just as Mr. Jeremiah and other teachers were a positive role model for me when I attended the institution, especially for students from single-parent households with the absence of a male figure to model what manhood is. And now we transition into the last phase of our journey, me being an attorney at present. The traits picked up at PBC were transferable to my present professional life. PBC education has paved the way for me to work towards trying to be the best attorney that I can be. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is a great engine of personal development." And PBC education surely allowed me to blossom where I was planted. There was always the acknowledgement of God. There is service to family, that no man is an island. Service to country. Attributes of honesty, a person of integrity, and all the other attributes that we just spoke about. And that are key ingredients to the profession. Whereas in PBC, Mr. Jeremiah, as well as the prefects, would have made a fuss at that time, in my perspective, about being punctual. Here in my professional life, no, you ought to be punctual for court or work. And being situationally aware is one of my biggest takeaways. And now you need to develop emotional intelligence. And the extracurricular activities, collaborative thinking is now transferable and done in every day at my job. In conclusion, I can say that PBC has molded me into the individual that I am today, and it has not only influenced my personal development, but that brotherhood and that community life has also enhanced my professional life. And for that, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear brother, Zuriel Francisque. Zuriel Francisque has now tempted me to share with you what he himself had instilled. The motto of the school, all PBC boys and girls who are also of PBC, because I know the next speaker had a tangential concern with PBC. Even in my time, I know she went there. I heard she excelled in the sciences, but I wouldn't say much on that yet. But the motto, Brother Zuriel speaks to its virtue and knowledge. He went into the mission statement, and to me, he lived the mission statement. Because that mission statement has in it some fundamental tenets. It indicates that through a caring and professional environment, PBC is and continues to be. Presentation Brothers College seem to have met every possible expectation that there is. The stakeholders who are there with us and continue to be there believes in the fostering of the creativity. My dear brother speaks about self-discipline that Alex spoke about, critical thinking that both of them spoke about, and the overall Christian surrounding principles of excellence in students. I don't think I could capture it better than they did, but it enshrines clearly the motive. More importantly, the philosophy upon which the school is built, both of them is living it. We have lived it, those of us who are of the past, and that philosophy continues to flourish. The school is built on very strong principles of Catholicism. And our beliefs are enshrined, as it's sometimes said, in the Apostles' Creed. Therefore, the philosophy of our school is simply that the Christian philosophy of virtue and knowledge, one of the hallmarks of the college, is academic excellence. Zurich speaks about the academic excellence, and again, the curriculum, more importantly, offers that which is best to meet the needs of the society, even within the context of family and the context of God. So the theme is well covered today, my dear brothers and sisters, and we have not yet finished because I don't think I want to say we live in the best for last, because the real speaker this evening is a gentleman called Dr. Didicus Jules, and you would hear more about that. But before I call on the next speaker, I think we want to again commend highly both Alex and Zurich for their presentation, because they were They are both illuminating, and they filled us all. So the next speaker, I wish to call on a dear friend of mine, a colleague. I think we were more or less, and let me leave the politics. Franca Bernardine.
Thank you. Yes, let's leave the politics. We're into education this evening. I can't help but say before I begin, the wonderful nostalgia brought back by both speakers, Mr. Francis and Mr. Simon in particular. I really got back into my convent uniform and looked up at Presentation College and all that was taking place up there. It's a wonderful feeling. And I hasten to tell Alec, believe you me, you're not the only one. There were many rebels amongst us, as you heard George himself indicated. But we have quite a reputation, all of us. And I recall my own days in the Bahamas when I was mistress of discipline, vice principal at the college, responsible for discipline. And there were many days in which I really had to hold my smile, because here you were explaining, no, my friend, this can't work this way at all. You have to have the correct uniform, you have to do this, you have to do that, and so on. And thinking back on my old days at school here in Grenada. So thank you for that wonderful bit and piece there. And let me start by saying good evening to everyone, and in particular, of course, the principal of PBC and other principals who may be here, and members of the alumni, students, everyone really that is present here this afternoon to share with us. And my comments are just, first of all, directed at the Presentation Brothers College, which is what I was supposed to be saying a few words on. And then looking at aspects of education as it relates to what's happening, our present, where we are as a nation, and certainly where we intend to go. I have a sharing of my own in terms of being a parent, and because my son, I'm the mother of 5 children, 5 professional children, I'm proud to say. Much of it during that time, I was a single parent myself, and later on, remarried. So that's by way of what is happening. So presentation was a critical part of my own life, both in terms of raising 2 sons and 3 daughters. So let me say it is really a pleasure to be here, not only because the topic is near and dear to my heart, but also because I've been given the privilege, of course, of addressing you on this very special occasion of the 75th anniversary celebrations of Presentation Brothers College. A college that has been not only a critical part of our history as a people, but a most important part of our present lives. And indeed, my own life personally, through my children, in so many ways. I am sure that many of you listening internationally as well, in the diaspora and also present here tonight, can make the same claim. For as long as we have known the town of St. George, we have known the Presentation College. We have known College Hill, as we called it then, and still call it now. It's part of our frame of reference, part of the excellence in academics and achievements generally, part of our outstanding sports programs. I could remember the pole vaulter from Presentation College and all the awe that went with their athletes. Everything about them seemed to always focus on excellent performance and high levels of achievement and excellence. Indeed, just part of who we are and what we have become as a people. So all of this comes up, and I just wanted to thank you again for the opportunity to be here. We must start at the beginning. And right at this, let us take a look at the start of Presentation College and those visionary persons who understood in a fundamental way a philosophy that I hold dearly to, that there would be no nation building and development taking place unless there was education taking place. And so, to Edmund Rice and the Institute of Presentation Brothers of Waterford in 1802, we must pay great tribute. Education in those days was reserved largely for the privileged and very selectively for the colonizers who held the top positions in society. And so, spreading their wings to Canada, USA, Caribbean, Peru, Ghana, Ireland, and indeed back in London, the brothers provided quality education to young people throughout the world. Every child must have a chance, and that's my own rally cry as well. And taking a portion of this concept to address the boys of our Grenadian communities and under the motto of virtue and knowledge, for 75 years, they empowered, taught, and trained their students for academic excellence, moral training, as you heard from two speakers before, discipline, character formation, respect for others, and a firm sense of self-worth within a religious and spiritual context. Over the years, they have left a very positive image and a positive feeling, even more importantly, towards the college, an island-wide respect for their achievements and continuous striving for good standards. This has been a model and a guiding light for others to follow. And I speak here very briefly of the A-levels. I could remember year after year, we waited to hear what were the results coming from Presentation College. Every year, long lines of people, chemistry, math, physics, particularly in the sciences. And I suppose I was particularly interested in that. But we used to smile and say, my goodness me, you can't beat those boys at all. They were really, up at the top there. College sports was the place to be if you got permission to go to college sports, which often you didn't. But if you went, you're here, as I say, all the pole vaulting and all the good things that happened. Teaching others, I understand the Governor General has mentioned that she too was a Presentation College product. Yes, she had received certain assistances in subjects and so on. I myself, Brother Ligori taught me math. And the reason why that was so, we were having a difficult time at the convent. Nobody was passing up to pre-Cambridge of December. And I said to my dad, better try Brother Ligori. And the rest was history. Brother Ligori sat down and told me exactly how. He drilled us in the different aspects of the subjects. And that was it, breezed right through. After failing pre-Cambridge in December, the whole class failed. So their teaching skills are phenomenal and something we always remember. My own sister Annette, who subsequently became an ophthalmologist, Brother Gonzaga is who taught her physics. Every Saturday she would go down for the extra classes and so on with Brother Gonzaga because physics was not done at St. Joseph's Convent. So, the far-reaching impact for all of us, so many of you older folk like myself, I see you there, I know you've passed through the hands, we know what the experiences were. And don't forget the college dance. And that was a painful one, because you had to wait until you were 15, at least I did. So I watched my sisters go off to college dance. I remember well, looking through the kitchen window and saying, you see that? Look what all, because college dance was the place to go at Christmas. beautifully organized, people behaved well, you got to chat with people, and to dance. Well, of course, when my turn came, and I was off to college dance. But unfortunately, it stopped the year after. So my younger sister always kept that as a grudge. She never got to experience the college dance. Thus were the pleasant memories of Presentation College as you did your thing. Brothers and sisters, the most important tool in development of any nation is education. And so, while health is a critical aspect, and agriculture practices, of course, because you have to feed yourself, both require knowledge and education to know what to do and how to do it. In the famous words of Benjamin Disraeli, and that is in his speech to the House of Commons way back in 1874, and I'm quoting, "Upon the education of the people of the country, the fate of the country depends." Speaks for itself. You can't go anywhere without the education. More recently, writers like Dr. Canute Thompson, I don't know if any of you have seen or heard from UWI, young professor, and he presented a book very recently on education and development, emphasizing its importance and the importance of striving forward and overcoming cultural impediments and so on in our quest for national development. One of my biggest pains is the fact that we are such a brilliant people. The Caribbean is full of talent, full of ability, and yet we're still so far behind because we have not somehow mastered the ability to capture all that good analysis, all the data that we keep getting, and put it in place in such a way that we can better our own standard of living. We seem to get sidetracked all the time into the politics and the power and all other factors. We have produced, imagine in one small area like OECS, or between St. Lucia and Trinidad, 3 Nobel Prize winners. There are countries in this world that have tried for over hundreds of years and have never produced a Nobel Prize winner. We got 3. We got Derek Walcott, we got V.S. Naipaul, and we got, of course, Arthur Lewis, who is on our $100 bill. Brilliant people. And somehow we still can't pull it together. And that is a personal grief of mine. I think we are defining who our politicians are in the wrong way, because we're getting sidetracked with everything else under the focus of developing the nation for the benefit of the people in this region. That is my own pain. And when I get the chance, I will say this right at the University of the West Indies, a past pupil, and I love it dearly, but the reality is that somehow our CARICOM leaders cannot take us in a meaningful time to where we need to go. Now, in the role model, if I may share with you, presented to CARICOM Ministers of Education in 2012 and 2013, Finland was the role model country selected because they told us that they had a built-in system of education that affords all its people a decent standard of living, all its people, quote, and interacting with some measure of financial stability. So the average man in the street in Holland could take up, in Finland, could take up and take his family on a little holiday. He didn't have to worry about whether he could butter his bread tomorrow morning and live in that way from generation to generation. And so they saw that their whole system as a role model for the Caribbean. So it was presented to ministers of education. I brought the team here to Grenada so that they could share with the principals what they had in mind. Now, there were no extremes of wealth or poverty, but everyone could afford for a little holiday and so on to their families. Now, preschoolers are taught exclusively in Finland by trained teachers to the master's degree level, so as to ensure maximum impact on all children's ability. So they claimed and proved that if in fact you put your most qualified teachers at the early stage, the product coming into primary and secondary education is so much more prepared that they are fertile for the reception of all that they needed to. Of course, they had other factors as well. They believe in a school feeding program, just like our own here, but everybody gets something to eat. They believe in a transport to school, so that if you're living more than 3 miles away from the school, you get it. So there were many benefits there, but which is what they were looking at, things that we could provide for our families so that country could get ahead. Now, Dr. Canu Thompson of UWI, Education and Development is his book. He mentions, and I quote, "The better the product coming from early childhood into school, the better chance they have to perform well at school." Bear in mind, too, the role of the parents in this sort of thing. So when you're feeding your youngster, which is what I used to remind myself, when I am feeding them, I say, you see, we're one more step forward for Grenada and the Caribbean. You give them something to eat, they pick up stuff at school. And this is how we have to battle it step by step. Likewise, the more students you have doing well out of tertiary education, the greater the chance the children have at university. I quote here Sir Hilary Beckles, and it's a very nice quotation because it reminds us of the impact of tertiary education on development of a society. Speaking particularly to the young people, you don't stop until you get through college. The role of tertiary education, says Professor Beckles, is to help the entire culture to rise. That's how you get the culture to rise. Everything we do, how we speak, how we behave, our cultural expressions, the arts, how we care for the elderly, how we nurture our children, suppress domestic violence, enhance the respect for the environment, all of these actions constitute the value of tertiary education can bring to lift a people to a higher level of comprehension. So you know what we're dealing with. Developments in education have come a long way. They've moved a long way. Compared to what we knew to what pertains presently. And as I said, regrettably, the Caribbean has been left behind in many respects, although ahead in some. Learning by rote and being examined on one's ability to remember long passages has given way to using information to problem solve and the critical thinking approach. That is what is used. It's no longer I can repeat what is there, but in actual fact, I could use this to solve the sugarcane problem, the banana problem, the whatever we have. We have moved from a teacher-centered approach in the classroom to a student-centered approach, and our teachers must be trained to handle that. The personal development skills I must take a moment to talk about. The personal development skills are a huge deficit for us in Grenada. I don't know if you're following, but according to the World Bank report, attitudes and values training significantly affect employment in Grenada and the OECS. I know both speakers before mentioned the issue of the values. That's what makes it successful, you know. That is what makes the person successful, not the 4 A's in the A levels. That's good, but it's who you become as a person and how you interact. Now, PBC has been striving to achieve these measures over the years and has been an excellent thrust, as you heard, evidence right here. Values training was also introduced by our Ministry of Education in 2009. It is important to note that lack of skills is considered to be the biggest obstacle for Grenadian firms seeking to employ youth, and that Grenada's skills gap is the most severe in the Western Hemisphere. I'm telling you as it is, because this is what motivated us to do. This is the World Bank report. I didn't work with it, but the World Bank report, it's on the internet. So if you pull it up, World Bank report on the Eastern Caribbean, school and work in the Eastern Caribbean, it is called, you will see it in there. So we have to be deeply concerned about that. Now, small tokens of skills training are nowhere enough to support the sort of demand this is generating. So I look about with some distress, and I hear, well, we have a little skills training award ceremony here for a couple of people for a period of time, 6 weeks skill training, it ain't that, To compete effectively in today's world, you have to be far more effective than that. It has to become what it has become at PBC. You have to have a unit dedicated to that. And by the way, skills training, the most important skill is the ICT. Do bear in mind that the technical skills in greatest demand, as I mentioned before, is the ICT, although, of course, you know all the rest of the skills. So I wanted to say to you, mainly from an interest point of view, the top 3 desired skills for work are attitude to work. They can't take correction. The managers complain when they correct them, they vex, and they may not come to work tomorrow. All these kind of humbugging us as a nation. You see, but it has to be addressed in school. It cannot be that we grumbling about it but not getting anything done about it. Attitudes to work is the most important. Team spirit is the second one that we lack. We don't know how to work together. Tell me all about it in the workplace and how to focus as a team. And it is showing heavily in Grenada. It's all in that book, you will see it. And cooperation skills. This is what they complained about. Other skills seen as vital include honesty, integrity, you heard them. Honesty, integrity, work ethic, problem solving. We don't have those things in the sort of way, meaningful way that we should. They are needed for successful performance at work and also, of course, in other settings. Bringing up children in their upbringing, their school, the culture, the curriculum, the ministry, they must all work together to achieve these changes. Children must be raised with a sense of collective consciousness in their communities and their responsibility for what happens there. I'm on my last page, George. But you get me on my favorite topic, so I'm sorry to burden you all, but it is very, very interesting. And I want to say to you that Theodore Roosevelt said, and you know who he is, to educate a man in mind and not morals is to educate a menace to society. Don't forget that, bear in mind. So they're well ahead in that regard. The way forward. We know education is critical for economic development, and it is proven that countries that show 60% more of the population with tertiary level education enjoy a far better standard of living for their people and generate economic stability. We understand what needs to be done. Now we got to get it done. Schools must increase the options they offer so that every child can find a niche. It can no longer be 8 subjects alone, as you see now in a number of the schools which we introduced back in 2009, 2010. You got to put everything there. Music, playing drum sets, whatever the talent and skill of the students, they must find it at school. And I saw this par excellence again in the Bahamas because they were dead serious about education and empowering their people. Church schools have a critical role to play, as they have done in the past, providing a strong moral compass, fair practices, raising young people with standards and ethics. It can't be clearer than this, it really can't. Humanitarian concerns for their fellow man. This is what brings about a successful human being, along with all the other factors that we spoke of. We are building, if we don't put in these factors, we are doomed to fail. 3, the parents' involvement. I want to urge the parents and the community to be involved in the process and provide support for the schools. The church schools have been doing a superb job. For God's sake, let them continue. Principals, ministry, and parents must work together for the sake of the nature. It's not a controlling relationship, and I make no hesitancy in saying this. The Ministry of Education does not need to have an iron grip on the schools. It is about empowering principals, and they are highly talented and trained people. it's not what I will tell you what to do, but in fact you listen, let them run their schools, and you guide with the policies perhaps of your present government or whatever government is in power. And so that along with is how you shape and you mold the situation. And the parents and community must be aware of the importance of, yes, of their role in all of this. So saying that to say, I'm at the end, last point. Thank you for bearing with me, but these things needed to be said. Presentation, you're well on the way. Continue under the good guidance of Mr. Jeremiah and indeed the association, and let us together build a Grenada that we could be proud of and offer us the kind of level we need. Thank you so much. I'm craving your indulgence for one more statement. You see this little booklet here? It's on anger management. There are 10,000 of them sitting at the bottom of your Ministry of Education. I don't know if they've been thrown, I don't know, whatever. But they're great little booklets, and the program, The Violence in Schools, is also, this comes from UNESCO. And I did bring home one for every school in my hand luggage, when I came back from UNESCO. We are talking about violence in schools at the moment. The children are not born with those skills. We have to imbue those skills in them. So it's introduced in Barbados 12 years ago, in Antigua 10 years ago. We need to think again how we're handling all this present violence. Thanks a million.
Well, the response that Sister Franca got for her presentation, I think she come up to the true form. She is Mistress Franca Alexis Bernardine, past parent and former educator. So she has educated us. I don't want to go into all of the main points and go straight into the next presentation. Presentation by Brother Robert Panovich, the community leader of Presentation Brothers College in St. Lucia. So we all have colleges, we are on our shows. So let's hear Brother. You ready? Brother Robert.
Good night from St. Lucia, and I'm very happy to share with you just a brief reflection. And I want to thank the committee for organizing the panel discussion as part of the 75th anniversary celebrations. And it's also happening here in St. Lucia. When the brothers came to Grenada in 1946, it was shortly after World War II. And after all the destruction and death and pain and suffering, the world was starting to breathe a little more freely. And there was a clarion call by bishops in the Caribbean for Catholic education. And the Irish brothers, through great sacrifice and enthusiasm, I have to say, left Ireland and arrived in Grenada in November 1946 and opened PBC officially on the 21st of January 1947. So that spirit, that pioneering, that missionary spirit that they brought with them still lingers on, I feel. You know, it was mentioned by previous speakers tonight about the presentation spirit. The family, the presentation family was mentioned. And what is that presentation spirit? I think it is one of service, one of commitment and dedication. You see, I could compare because I was not a product of the first 5 years of secondary school of presentation education. I came from another school, and I was privileged to be to join the presentation college in Trinidad. And to be honest with you, I was bowled over. I could compare. I was bowled over by that spirit that I saw in the school, The students were so proud of their school. You know, at games, they were chanting and waving flags. And I was really, really bowled over. I was bowled over by the dedication and commitment of those brothers who taught me, and also the staff. It was infectious. There was this spirit of enthusiasm, of ideals, of high standards that I really, really started thinking, you know something, this is what I want for myself, for my life. And it was very, very instrumental in me making that decision to be part of this presentation spirit. And so I made that leap of faith to join the Presentation Brothers. Now, I don't think it's too well known. About 1986, there was a seismic shift in the Presentation Brothers in the way they were thinking. You see, the Pioneering Brothers, when they came, and it was mentioned by previous speakers, that the need after World War II in the Caribbean was science. And I think Franca mentioned that, you know, the science, physics and chemistry and mathematics and so on. So there was a very, very heavy emphasis on building modern labs and getting the science programs running. And the brothers really plowed a lot of energy into that. But about 1986, there was a seismic shift in the thinking of the brothers, that they said that the emphasis should not only include academics, but also include a sort of option for the poor. And I attended that a meeting in Ireland in 1986, and that was a pivotal moment in the history of the brothers, that no longer can we ignore the cry of the suffering, the cry of the poor, and that all of our schools were almost mandated to do something about it. And that happened in about 1986. And brothers at that time also felt that they wanted to get back to the roots, our roots, the charism of our founder, Blessed Edmund Rice, who started the first presentation colleges to cater for the poor and the needy. So there was a strong desire by many brothers and the congregation to get back to our roots. Where does that lead us today? What are the challenges facing us today? Clearly, the challenges are changing all the time globally. They've just come out, I hope, of COVID-19. I understand in Grenada, it's almost as normal. We're getting there in St. Lucia, but I like to hear, I like what I'm hearing about Grenada. But a lot of the challenges facing us now are who is the real poor right now? One of it is the earth. The earth is crying for our attention. And Franca would know, when Franca was talking, you brought back a lot of good memories. You see, Franca was the judge of the Young Leaders program at one point. And I remember one year we did a project called the Run of the Tittery. And I remember passing by St. Joseph's Convent Gate and Franca pulling me aside and said, I really enjoyed that project. I says, well, you are a judge. Could you tell me anything further? And she said, I can't. But I really enjoyed it. And I think that year we placed first. But it really was the cry of the earth and the needs of the earth, and also the cry of those who are suffering, those who are in pain, the poor. And in many of our schools around the world, you know, our students raise funds, whether it's at Christmas time or they have programs during the year to raise funds for the poor. I'm proud to say that our schools around the world do this. Also, there is a strong emphasis on the belief that God dwells in every single person. Mr. Francis mentioned in his presentation that, you know, the school was also, it presented him with a father figure. And I think that is so important in the world today, because a lot of research is showing that the highest suicide rate in the world right now is among men between the ages of 15 and 35, young men. It's 3 times higher than any age group. And I remember one expert explaining that the reason for that is that crisis is that men are not comfortable in their own skins. They feel that they have to live up to this image of what a man should be. It's not about tenderness and caring for his children and the family man and so on and being loving and affectionate. It's about what we call today Putinism and Trumpism, where to prove that you're a man, you have to conquer, you have to be violent, you have to subdue, in the most violent ways. And that is a toxin that I think, a challenge facing us as we move into the future. And it is bearing true today as we see with the war in Ukraine. And my prayers at this point go out to the people, the suffering people of the Ukraine. So that is one of the big challenges today that we are facing, to combat this false image of masculinity, a toxic image of masculinity. So I know in the interest of time, I am not going to labor anymore, but more and more I'm beginning to see this. And parents, you would know that, a parent told me recently, for example, that a 24-year-old son who is living in the States moved location and also job, and he was having a very difficult time adjusting, and he fell into depression. And she picked it up as mothers do. And when she asked him, what was the problem, he said, well, I'm depressed and I'm lonely. And she said, well, why didn't you say something? He says, a man is not supposed to say things like that. We're supposed to handle our own problems. And she says, no. And that's the false image of masculinity that I think is challenging us, and the challenge really as we move ahead is to hold before us that image of Christ, the tender, compassionate Jesus, who would embrace the leper and cry and heal. And I think that is the image of masculinity, of manhood, of Christianity that we have to present to the world. That's the beauty of Christ that we need to hold up as we move forward into the future. And also, it is so good. I have to say at PBC, we have done very good at debating and so on. There is a maturity that I sense many times listening to the head prefect as well in our students, that, we're critical thinkers. And that has to be emphasized, and that is being emphasized to combat a lot of the nonsense that we see on the media, the fake news, that we have to critically analyze and think about what we are saying and what we are doing, and not just jump on the bandwagon and criticize the government or criticize things for the sake of criticizing because we are experiencing hardships. I saw recently a video of some protesters in Trinidad, protesting about the price of oil and flour and sugar and so on, saying the government must go, and the opposition join on the bandwagon and say, yeah, they must go, they're to blame. And I'm saying to myself, they're to blame. Do these people realize what's happening in the world, the war in the Ukraine, COVID-19, shipping costs, just blindly and mindlessly following the crowd? And that is one challenge facing us. And I think at PBC, we're doing a very good job. I want to end by a quotation that I like. And it was by a coach, a football coach. And he says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs are people who have come alive. And today in St. Lucia, there was a technician who came to install some fiber optics. And the way he was moving, a young man, he was moving and installing and so on. It was very evident on his face and by his body language that he was in love with what he was doing. And I mentioned it to him. I says, young man, you really like your job? He says, I absolutely love it. And I said, it's people like you that we need in the world. Not people who choose a career because their parents want them to become something, but you choose it because you have a passion and you have a love for it. And I think at PBC, we emphasize that it's not about the money, it's about serving humanity, it's about transforming our society to make it a better place. It's about caring for the poor. It's about being people of prayer. I thank you very much. I hope I can hear clearly enough. I wasn't, I don't know what the audio was.
I didn't hear that. Go ahead. Lovely. The quotation that Brother Fanovich just gave, which summed up everything, brings back a quotation too to me. Those of you who would now know my age, in children of the 60s, we had a gentleman, Brother Liam, slender fella. And Brother Liam, I never understood it until now, listening to Brother Panovich. Brother Liam always used to say, it is easy to say what you believe than to be what you believe. Huh? It is easy to say what you believe than to be what you believe. That is a fundamental statement. Because it is always easy to say we believe in human rights than to be fighting for human rights. I think so. So let's now go to the main event of the deal. I would call again on Brother Yusuf to introduce the feature speaker of this evening's proceedings. And I say no more. Brother Yusuf will do the rest.
Dr. Didakus Jules has had a long and distinguished multi-dimensional career focused on education and social transformation and organizational re-engineering. He's currently the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, a regional integration grouping of 11 member states. Some of his career experiences include Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Caribbean Examinations Council, as well as Permanent Secretary for Education and Human Resource Development in St. Lucia, and the Permanent Secretary for Education and Chief Education Officer concurrently in revolutionary Grenada. Dr. Jules was recently honored in St. Lucia with the St. Lucia Cross for distinguished service at a national and regional level. And we also have here to answer questions on behalf of Dr. Jules, Mrs. Sarah Simon, who is currently the Program Director of the Education Management Unit within the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Eric?
Distinguished friends and colleagues, allow me to express my appreciation to the Principal and the Anniversary Organizing Committee for the kind invitation to offer some reflection on the impact of the Presentation Brothers College on the human landscape of Grenada and the potential for future transformation in the wider OECS. As a presentation boy myself, a product of St. Mary's College in St. Lucia, I could not refuse an invitation from the college to offer these reflections. As a radical leader in the student movement at St. Mary's in St. Lucia, I felt even more indebted to do this, because that radicalism itself was a paradoxical product of the college's ethos. I say paradoxical product because while the presentation colleges were an integral part of the evangelical and humanistic design of the Catholic faith, the educational philosophy embraced the notion of the fullest development of the human person, which required a free spirit of inquiry if its potential was to be actualized. The irony of my situation, therefore, is that notwithstanding our radical perspectives at the time, hindsight reveals that it was precisely the quality of education we received from the Presentation Brothers that encouraged our critical thinking and self-assertion. In other words, a presentation education provided the conditions for our becoming. In this presentation, I must confess an inadequate knowledge of the specific history of Presentation College in Grenada, but I have gleaned and learned its essence from the remarks made by Principal Jeremiah and Vicar General Father Carl Haynes. Thanks to my own experience of St. Mary's College and a strong appreciation of the historical role and work of the Presentation Brothers in St. Lucia, provided by an extraordinary history of St. Mary's College written by Sir Calix George, a very distinguished St. Lucian, I am confident in my perspective on the role of these institutions. How did it all begin? Allow me to quote Principal Dominic Jeremiah on the history of PBC, and I quote, "The Presentation Brothers arrived in Grenada in 1946 after they were invited here to establish the first Catholic male secondary school by Archbishop Finbar Ryan. The first and only Catholic female secondary school was already established by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Cluny since the later decades of the 1800s and was providing a holistic education for some of our girls." End of quote. It is instructive to note the parallel trajectory of Catholic secondary education in Grenada and St. Lucia, since the Sisters of Cluny also established a Catholic girls' secondary school, St. Joseph's Convent, there as well. And I continue the quotation from Principal Jeremiah. He said, "The founding brothers dedicated themselves to this task, and within a relatively short period of time, Presentation Boys College rose to prominence in the educational landscape of Grenada, producing quality young men who would go on to make significant contributions to the development of Grenada." End of quote. Vicar General Father Carl Haynes, in his remarks at your January rededication, emphasized, and I quote from the Catholic News, "PBC has given 75 years of quality to the nation, producing exemplary men not only in Grenada but around the world." He cited the school having among its alumni 3 prime ministers in Grenada, and recalled that years ago, while studying at the seminary of St. John Vianney and the Uganda Martyrs, Mount St. Benedict, he had learned that its brother Presentation College, San Fernando, had produced 2 prime ministers. He said the Presentation Brothers had given birth to 4 children: Presentation College San Fernando, Presentation College Chaguanas, St. Mary's College St. Lucia, and Presentation College Barbados. End of quote. I should add that St. Mary's College St. Lucia also shares this esteemed contribution, having contributed 2 Nobel Prize winners, Sir Arthur Lewis and Sir Derek Walcott, 3 Prime Ministers to St. Lucia, 2 Supreme Court judges to the OECS, 8 QCs to St. Lucia, 8 prominent agricultural scientists, and many, many more esteemed professionals. What then were the philosophical and educational foundations of this contribution? These foundations were anchored in the best traditions of classical education, which focused on providing all students with the tools necessary for self-education, a solid grounding in humanities and the sciences, with extracurricular activity through school clubs and activities designed to prepare one, not for school, but for life. The record of the presentation colleges in the OECS speaks for themselves, and I would encourage former students with a penchant for history to consider documenting the history and the incalculable contribution, as Sir Calix George has done, by documenting the contribution in St. Lucia. What then are the opportunities of the future? Past contributions of this value are important because they demonstrate the ways in which our forebears were able to fashion institutional responses to the challenges of our time that not only address the contemporary, but also laid visionary foundations for the future. It was Frantz Fanon who said, and I quote, that each generation must out of relative obscurity discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Our challenge, therefore, as we celebrate the immense contribution of the PBCs to Grenada and to the other OECS countries, is to contextualize the accomplishment as a guide to the future we want to create. And our responsibility is to respond to the contemporary with the same vision, commitment, and determination that birthed these distinctions. The nature of our time is best characterized by the concept of VUCA. We live in volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. Let us be clear. Human history is a constant evolution, a never-ending march to the future, even if that immediate future is a tragic reenactment of the tragedies of our past. For better or for worse, life moves forward, not backwards. There are points in history when its trajectory is evolutionary, and then comes a moment when it becomes revolutionary, whether that revolution is technological, political, or environmental. We live at such an inflection point in human history when we are faced with revolutionary change, and that process is a convergence of the environmental, the geopolitical, and the technological. Determining the best possible evolution of Presentation Brothers college education in the OECS requires that we excavate the lessons of its past contributions, that we identify the elemental value that was brought to our education landscape, and incorporate this in any new model of education provision designed to face VUCA times. My colleague from the OECS Commission, Ms. Cicera Simon, who is the head of Education Development and Management Unit, is well placed to speak to the new trajectory that we are taking in the OECS to transform education to meet these challenges. And you can question her about that in the question period. In concluding, therefore, the guiding pillars of this transformation must involve the following. 1, secondary education must focus on competencies, not simply knowledge acquisition. For as Confucius reminded us, the value of knowledge is having it to apply it. Secondly, 21st century competencies must enhance and balance the quotients if we are to future-proof ourselves and the upcoming generation. There are many perspectives on what these quotients are, but suffice it to say that it is no longer an intelligence quotient, an IQ thing. It also involves EQ, emotional quotient. It involves SQ, spiritual quotient. It involves AQ, adversity quotient, and CQ, creativity quotient. If you think about it, these are the challenges of shaping the human person in this time that will consolidate the legacy of the presentation colleges of the OECS and of all of our schools and enable them to build our Caribbean civilization. Thank you.
Are we going to get a question from the lady? Is she? You should come and do this. Thank you, Brother Didicus, somebody who is well known to us with a particular epoch in our life and life of Grenada. He has given us a lot of food for thought, and I know that we are all thinking about it because we have a question period. Before we embark on the question period, I want to ask Brother Yusuf to come and give the brief introduction to our lady from the OECS who is going to participate in this exercise. We also have in waiting Brother Paul Kings Douglas, who has volunteered to give us a few pieces. Those of you who remember the Tantimural epoch, I believe he would translate Tantimural in the days of PBC. So we wait anxiously after the question time for that purpose. Thank you. I'm told we should go straight into Paul Keynes and give all you a little laughter before we get serious. So Paul Keynes is online shortly.
Hi there, Paul Keynes, Douglas here. First of all, let me say how glad I am to be here as a part of this discussion. I must thank you for inviting me to share with you. I would like to also say special congratulations to Presentation Brothers College on their celebration of the 75th anniversary, and I hope you have a fantastic celebration. You know, I went to college around 1954. That's a long time ago. You know, and some of my fondest memories are of the times I was trying to play sports at college in those days. So this narrative is based on some of those little experiences I had as a college boy. You know, because when you went to college in those days, they tell you you had to play games. Whether you had 1 foot, no foot, or big bottom, you played games, right? So I asked them, there are things like dominoes, all fours, you know, search the pack cards and them kind of thing. They say, no, them is not games. It's football, cricket, or sports. We should call everything not cricket and football, sports. So I say, you got to understand that in those days too, I was about 9 years old, about 4 foot tall, weighing about 90 pounds. I looked like a half-ripe Lacatan banana. And in those days too, you never had no thing when you fail exam. When you fail exam, you're allowed to stay and take it over and over and over till you pass. So college had some hardback old men. Some of them with beard all down to their toe, would not leave school, only failing exam, and all they do is playing cricket, football, and sports. And it's them hardback. Some of them married, they're still in school. And it's them hardback fellas I had to go and play cricket and football and sports with. So I said, let me try athletics. Well, you see, athletics, when it come to lime and spoon, bag race, wheelbarrow, and them kind of thing, I was good. But 220, 100 meters, 440 in those days, pain. I running barefoot and them hardback men have on spikes. You ever get juked with a spikes yet? When you see men running fast, they're not fast, they're fast, you know, it's spikes, afraid. So I say, see this, this spikes business is a serious thing. I barefoot and these hardback men have one spikes, I get in joke. So I say, let me forget about athletics, yeah? It's a kind of dangerous thing, and let me try football, right? Not because I really like football either, yeah? Because all I wanted was a jersey. You see, I wanted a football jersey. And in those days, only members of this team allowed to wear the school colors. Nowadays, everybody wearing school colors. You know, they say it's marketing and it's public relations. But in those days, you had to be a member of the team to wear the school colors. So I joined football to get a jersey. But I find football was a criminal game. 11 hardback men running up and down behind one stupid ball. You can't rest. Even when you don't have the ball, you still have to run. That makes no sense to me, right? And then in those days, we didn't have them nice FIFA football like you have now, you know, with them kind of hard leather, like it come from Texas, right? And you had to pump it up with a bicycle pump and then lace up the whole thing like a corset. And when you kick that and that hits you in your face, your whole face is gone, you know. So it wasn't easy. And then we didn't have no FIFA fancy boots like they have today. We had something called brogues, like police boots, right? And underneath they had them little pegs, football pegs, make out of mahogany, guaranteed to break your foot in 4 places. So I say, boy, football is a dangerous game. Here, no man. And in those days, you had to pad up too. If you can't kick, you had to pad up. So you had ankle pad, you had knee pad, you had shin pad, you had belly pad, and you had a box to protect your future. Because if you get kicked down there, your whole future gone. But in those days, you used to have something called fruit of the loom underpants. Remember those things? Fruit of the loom. And when you had the elastic get slack, the box swinging left, right, eh? So sometimes your fruits end up in the loom, you know. And imagine you running down the road and somebody behind you, and they say, I'll go kill you, and you're running in your box swinging left, right. You have to make a decision, foot or ball. You forget the ball and you run and save your foot, right? So football was a dangerous game. So I say, boy, let me try cricket, because cricket is a gentleman's game. Same 11 men, all dressed in white. You're under the trees, eating snow cone, roast corn, soft drink, and thing, having a good time. You go on the field, you swing your bat, you make a duck, and you're back under the trees again, eating snow cone and thing. I say, boy, that is a civilized game. Cricket is my game. But boy, the fates were against me. Otherwise, all know so I better than Brian Lara. You know, man. You see, in those days, they had one set of gears for the whole school. No matter how old, how big, how tall, you're wearing the same set of gears. Yeah? One set of pads. When one man have on one pad, the other man have on the next pad. You had one pad batting. When you out, you got to take off the pad and get the man who coming in before the match could go on. This is why it was so hard to get West Indians out LBW, because one pad batting. When you hear your foot, you miss that ball, was BBW, break foot before wicket, right? So that's why we produced such good players in those days, because serious consequence for your foot if you have one pad and you don't know how to bat, right? Same thing with the bat. One bat for the whole team. When they bring my bat, it takes 2 men to bring my bat for me. And my bat reach me by my ears up here. Boy, I remember the first time I walk out a bat, boy. If you see me, boy, my pad reaching by here, my bat reaching by here. I have on a cap and I have one shade, $1.25 shades in those days. I have it on, boy. And they're giving me advice. Here the advice they're giving me. Mind they bust your head, That's what they're giving a young boy now going out to bat. I look like an ice cream can and jar going out there. Well, boy? But one thing that shows us was how to defend ourselves, right? They show us forward defensive and backward defensive, right? Well, boy? First over coming up. I take up forward defensive, bat and pad close together, head down, chin up, foot right down the wicket, and I close my eye. The captain say, you're looking good, but do that before. Do that after the ball, not before. Do that after the ball, not before, right? So I say, okay. Well, the next ball coming up, I do the same thing. Bat and pad close together, head down, chin up, and I close my eye. I feel the breeze when the ball pass. By the time I open my eye, I have the ball ready to bowl again. I say, this time I'm going to hit the ball. Second ball coming up. And the captain saying, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. But my eye was on the bat. That was the heaviest piece of wood I ever lift up in my life. So second ball coming up, I hit them backward defensive on the back foot, bat and pad close together, head down, chin up, and I close my eye again. Boy, I didn't have my eye on the ball, but the ball that had the eye on me, it hit the bat and it fly up and it knock off my shades. Fellas say, boy, we don't know why you're wearing shades because you're closing your eye. We don't know why you're closing your eye because your shades blacker than anything they ever see, right? Well, but the next ball coming up, I say I'm going to hit this ball today if it kill me dead, right? And I squint and I close my eyes. The ball come, I swing the bat. They tell me I make history. I get catch by 3 men at the same time. Wicketkeeper catch the ball, umpire catch me hat, and the man in slips catch the bat. Boy, at that point, I begin to consider football again. But you see, I'd like to field because they put me on long on to field. Now, long on is a lovely place. It's quite down there, nothing no happening on long on. Nobody can hit the ball so far. So I used to love to go on long on because I have nothing to do down there. I enjoy my life and people playing cricket. I happy, well boy, until this day. I am long on, enjoying my cricket. Nobody taking ball by me. Till I hear somebody ball, catch it! Some stupid man hit the ball towards long on and it coming towards me at about 100 miles an hour. You ever see a cricket ball coming about 100 miles an hour? Yeah? The ball getting bigger and bigger and bigger and I going backer and backer and backer. I said, this is one ball getting dropped today. But the captain inspired me, man. He said, if you drop that ball, I'll break your foot. Well, boy, I put out my hand so. And I hear, boop, the ball stick there. Talk about pain. My mouth open and shock. My eye open big. All my hair stand up in my head. My thumb bend back and touch my little finger. My fingernail take off on holiday. Men say that's the greatest catch they ever see. Men asking for autograph. I asking for ice. So you could imagine the situation. They say, boy, you the best thing we ever see. They say I remind them of Gary Sobers. They say I could make West Indies team in about 2 years, they show, boy. So on the basis of that brilliant catch, I get picked to play the next match, boy. I had the top of the list. Total disaster. I bowl 1 over, they hit me 6 sixes, 36. I go in and swing the bat and make a duck, and I drop 5 catch, not 1, I drop 5. They tell me I'm the worst cricketer God put on the face of the earth. They tell me I sell out the match. They tell me I can't catch a cold. They tell me my hand like a basket. They tell me go convent, take up that ball. The same men who tell me I was greater than Gary Sobers about 2 weeks before. That is when I decide to take in front before in front take me, and to take up the safest position in the game, commentator. How is that? Quick crack, wire bend, story end. Hope you enjoy the rest of your conference and your celebrations.
Well, I needn't say anymore. This is timely, man. Everybody laughing. There ain't see nobody laughing. This is a wonderful day. So let's give a big round of applause to our son and son. I'm sure he's going to call me to find out because I told him I had not seen this program. He asked me, how is it? And I told him I didn't see it because I wasn't as fascinated as Richie and them. And for that purpose, let's give Richie and them a big hand too because it is nice. At this juncture, we have the floor open for questions. We had the panelists. We have our sister in the OECS, is she there? To answer questions on the presentation of Dr. Didikas. She's not on. Yeah. So then the floor is open for contributions from each and every one of you. This being our day to reflect. On the reflections, I think some critical questions have arisen, particularly from Sister Franca. In other words, while we believe that the nation ought properly to be considering the issue of education as crucial, not only crucial for the sake of crucial, but being part of the social mobility and indeed the national capacity for us to succeed in the global environment. That is what I believe has been looming large this evening, that education is really the platform. The question that arises, do we as a nation have the necessary trained personnel to implement this mandate? I threw that out to start. Sister Franca, you may have a bite at the cherry now.
Thank you. With all due respects, Mr. Chair, I would very much like to hear the input, other voices and their opinions on the whole issue that you have raised. So I'll wait before I make comments again.
Yeah, we'll let them come. Oh. All right, the floor is open. Sister Franca hasn't reneged, but she's given an opportunity because you know she has come to the realization that she had spoken for long enough. You need to come up and go onto the microphone is here, because you remember you're going large. Making a contribution.
Well, from your experience as a parent, educator, and Minister of Education, how critical was the role of the brothers and, by extension, the Catholic Church in the success of PBC over the years?
As a parent first, I remain extremely grateful for the level of teaching and for the imbuing of principles that took place with my son. He has done exceptionally well and has made his name on an international. He's an air and space engineer, Cambridge trained, and before completing even his doctorate at 23, he was, they recruited him from the United States. So it started here. This is where it was built. He learned his science, he learned the discipline, he learned everything he needed to learn to move forward right here at PBC. And I have no doubt the training continues in the capacity in which he presently serves. So as a parent, I have no qualms about it. Insofar as my own growing up, well, I did share with you the impact that PBC had on us as young people, and how we looked up to things that were done there, and the genius, we used to call it, of the science programs there. Brother Fanovich made reference to it. In terms of the religious aspect and the Christianity and the impact at that level, there is no doubt about it at all. The influence that the religious schools have, including the Catholic schools. We spoke with them very early, with the bishop. Monsignor Lamontine represented the church at that time and during those negotiations. We saw their input as shown over all the years as being absolutely invaluable to the development of the children in the nation. And so we saw no need to interfere with, but indeed to mesh the policies of the then ministry and the government with what happened. I remember very clearly visiting, for example, the Westerhall Secondary School, where there was a major violent interaction. And in visiting there, because we took a team of persons from the ministry and spoke with them, and they were they described the event. The young man was beating up the young lady. This is in school, in school hours, 12 o'clock in the day, a proper thrashing going on the grounds of the school. So in asking, I said, well, where is the staff? The staff are all peeping out, well, they're concerned about their lives, peeping out from the windows while this young man threatens to half kill this young lady on the grounds. And in chatting with the staff and principal, clearly they never felt empowered to deal with it. The answer was to call the ministry and have them intervene, and by which time, there would have been a serious catastrophe at the time. So it was clear to me that the empowerment of the principals is a critical part of it. And therefore, she did not feel, I asked, well, who you think should have dealt with this? The answer was not the principal at all, in any of the cases. So I had to say to them, the people responsible are all of you here. Anything that happens here, you have the right and the authority under this person here to do as she suggests. This lady is the lady in charge of the school. And issues of that nature, you take orders from her. I could guarantee you that if she gets on the phone and calls, I will come personally, along with army members if necessary, so that students understand on these premises, the principal and the staff are in charge. You can't have students in charge on the school. So but then, you have to know how to develop that concept with them. It was therefore a lot easier to get in the values training that was then taking place at many of the other institutions. We never had a problem after that for the 5 years. It was there on Happy Hill Secondary that we had the problem. In both cases, we went physically to intervene. And it emphasized to us the importance of bringing in the personal development skills, and therefore developing a cohort of counselors and so on. I don't know if I'm answering your question, if I'm on the point, but please guide me if I'm not.
I would say that you did answer my question.
All right.
And I
Yes, please.
Well, I am a student and I am very persistent about my work and what I do. And I would say every night I would, practice till 12, and have this certain dedication. And it's like sometimes even the littlest things that would happen to me, I would, beat myself up over it. And I am a person that I tend to, I don't want any help. I would, tend to, struggle in silence and, try to do things on my own. And I also suffer with anger issues. I have suffered with anger issues for a couple of years, trying to, figure it out on my own and, trying to, as a young man, trying to fix it. And I guess I would say to calm down. And I am striving towards a dream of becoming a surgeon, and it's like, I think that I am beating up myself too much, and maybe I am pushing myself too hard, and I am thinking that as a young man pushing myself so much that I may burn out. And I don't know like what else to do. I mean, I don't really want to go to my parents about it. I still would prefer to handle it on my own. But yeah, I would also, love your advice on, what I should do and what direction I should go in.
Your honesty and openness is the most important aspect of all of this. The fact that you could express so freely how you feel about it, and that's the first step to conquering just that. I think it's important you remain focused. Those kinds of careers are ones that require just what you're saying, the persistence and focus and not to lose it. But at the same time, an appreciation of that it's okay, you're going to get there as long as you do. You don't need to get anxious about it. You're going to get there as long as you continue to work hard and do, because that's what you would like to be. My youngest son is at that stage. He is doing surgery and has just finished the first part of what you call the FRCS. I would love you to have a chat with him. He's like a focused slave from morning until night. And I have to keep saying, my friend, you have arrived at this juncture. There is no need to be quite as, all day, every day, God in the operating theater, so that he's there to see all procedures. But he always was a focused person, very focused, and a thinker, but at the same time, needing the support to chat about things and to relax and understand that you will get there. It's good always to chat with someone, always. Because humans, I believe, are not, God made us as to help each other and to journey in life. You have to select who you talk to, of course. And should there be any difficulty with, parents or so, meaning to say a little shy or whatever, just select an adult who you think that you're comfortable with, and certainly chat, because people have a wealth of knowledge and experience that they could help with. Good luck here.
Okay.
I sat and listened, very much impressed with all the speakers I may say. In particular, Mrs. Bernadine and guest speakers that we had, Director Jules. I want to say, as an educator myself, I try all the time to analyze or to look with a close eye at the educational landscape of our country. And sometimes I think we're going forward, and sometimes I think we're going backwards. And I know it's about time for us to create a balance. And as I just heard the young guy spoke a while ago, and you're very frank with it. And so I really believe the inclusion of the values certainly will help to guide him on the right path. Mentoring is something that we don't often have in Grenada, and the teaching system to me needs mentorship, a strong, solid mentorship program for principals, for teachers, for students. We need it. And so that will help him to stay on course, to be inspired, and to do well. Our education system is 30 years behind. I'm serious, 30 years behind.
More than that.
Well, that's what the latest data, 30 years behind. And so I believe it's time for a national conversation. This is a good forum, and so I really expected the place to be crammed. And I think sometimes we miss things like these when we can just come together and share and learn. So we need an intervention now. We need to understand, why do we still have oversized classrooms, overloaded curriculum? So we're talking about getting our children, we're talking about competencies, but yes, we're pushing subjects after subject. And so I'm thinking a lot of our students, today I heard that we have, I was in a meeting today, and in terms of literacy, 33%. In terms of math, 20-something%. And I'm saying, my goodness, where are we going? Where are we? What can we do? And I'm thinking that there is so much being pushed to the students that there's no place for storage. They're not storing any, because there's so much at the same time, too much new information is just coming at them. So there's no place for storage. And so how can they recall or how else to retain and to recall sufficiently to get them to the place that they want to be? So even, yes, we have some students who are succeeding, but they're in the minority. So we want more of our students to be successful in school. And I'm glad that we shared tonight that it's not just academic, but we have to move into the future-ready skills and on how to negotiate, and that would help him quite a lot, the whole critical thinking, the determination, the self-introspection, and all of these things that we can get about. But we have to create an environment in our schools. And I think it's time for us to get to a student-centered learning environment where we as teachers don't believe we are the sole source of knowledge. We're not. And it's time for us to give the students a chance to experience, experiment, to discover in the classroom. So perhaps if we look at, rather than us going to the blackboard with just putting the notes on, or same textbook you're reading from and same notes you're giving back, we need to get to that place where that whole, we spoke about creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, confidence, and all of those good communication skills come alive in our classrooms so that our students can benefit more. And in that vein, I want to say tonight that I would love to see a solid history program in our schools. Because I think if we know history, not just for examination, but being involved in history, because if we understand our history, then I think as a country, we'll be better able to move forward. We're better able to get our children to understand who they are, where they're going, the experiences of the past, and how that affects what's happening now. So I think rather than us just pushing out the information all the time, probably some pointed questions as teachers we can begin to generate and get those students to be involved in the whole critical thinking process so that more children can have a voice, more of them can be involved. That whole creative process is so important for us to get our students into the whole business of creativity. Then of course the ICT will come alive and all of that. But I think there's a lot that we need to do. I want to say congrats to Mr. Jeremiah and his team. And I hope that maybe more of this kind of session can be held in terms of educational, so we can come together and learn from each other and begin to build this country. Because without a proper education system, we're not going to go anywhere. As we look at society, we realize that, I mean, once you look at your society, you can know what kind of education system that you have. And we need to move from where we are. and to stretch forward. I believe we have competent people in Grenada, probably in diaspora. We have people who can come together for us to look at a viable and guaranteed curriculum for our students, where every child has the chance to learn, where there's time on task. And from the preschool, I think someone spoke about early childhood, maybe it was you that spoke about that level of schooling. Because unless we don't get the base right, we're not going to get the top career. And that's part of the biggest problem, that we don't have that quality at the bottom down there. And that's so important for educational growth in our students. So I trust that we can make some strides to move from where we are and to stretch a little bit more. So forums like these are valuable. And so I am very happy that I came. I've learned quite a lot this evening, and I trust that together as Grenadians, that we will look at these 30 years that we're behind in education. That's the last data that I read, and I'm very much displeased and unhappy as an educator to think that we're 30 years behind, and I've not heard a national conversation on where we are, where we're going, what are we going to do? How do we move from here? Thank you.
Good evening. I have a question written here, but it's on reflection. The distinguished educator seems to have answered the question that I have here, and it would have read like this. What are some of the new skills and competencies that would now be required in the education system? I think you spoke to it, really. You have. Well, whilst I was sitting there, though, somebody texted me a next question. So I'm going to ask this other question. This one is very simple. And the question that it texts is, are we going to have another session with Mr. Keynes Douglas?
You're good, prepared.
If I may comment on the last question that was asked, I just want to make a comment in that looking at where I'm at right now in life, I think sometimes the system has failed me to a certain degree in financial literacy and other life skills that you ought to have known in your 20s or coming out from school. Yes, we focus on finding X and finding Y and multiplication, but all the other soft skills in knowing this is how you run a business, this is the things that you ought to do at a certain age, or you should have these certain soft skills in order to go forward in life. But if I have to say one of the relevant skills, it will also be financial literacy.
Yeah.
A question directed to Alex Simon. Mr. Alex Simon spoke adequately about his current experience at Presentation Brothers College. However, if a student now preparing for the CPEA exam approached you looking for guidance about making his list of schools to attend in the new academic year, what are 3 or 4 things you would tell him about why he should put PBC on his list?
Alex, you were.
So, 4 or 3 things why you should put PBC on his list, right? That's correct?
Yep.
Okay. So, to try to break that down into 4, it's kind of hard. But one of the things I realized that you could find in PBC is first and foremost teachers that actually care about the students. And you know, when you go into secondary schools or university, it's kind of hard to find teachers that care about the students in a personal level. Another thing you could find in PBC is a variety of subjects, and not only subjects like academic subjects, but subjects like football, well, PE, under the PE bracket, physical education. You could find football, you could find table tennis and stuff like that. So first of all, the teachers, second of all, the subjects, third of all, the friends. Well, that could be dependent on the generation you're in. So, so it's kind of hard to see that, but I think it's really drilled in by the teachers, by the staff members, the brotherhood of PBC that, you know, if you see a PBC man in town or a PBC boy in town, a PBC boy in town, you won't just see him as a stranger, because once you have the PBC uniform, he's like your brother still. So that brotherhood is instilled in PBC. So first you have the teachers, then you have the subjects, then you have the brotherhood. And then finally, I would say, is the teaching in PBC. And as the lady was talking about education and how the education system should be, I kind of reflected on the teaching as in PBC, and it's not just about coming on a blackboard and then you're getting stuff. Sometimes the teachers just give us a topic to teach the class while the teachers sit down as a student in the class. And that's kind of a very innovative way for us to learn. And that's the 4 things you could find in PBC. First, you'll find, that's the first thing I say. First, you'll find teachers, good subjects, good brotherhood, and good teaching in PBC.
Also, another question from me. This is a personal question. How do you deal with listening and procrastination?
What was that?
How do you deal with listening and procrastination?
So, listening, for me, I think listening becomes more easy. Like, as the guy said this evening in my biography, that I love foreign languages. And one of the things very important in foreign languages is listening. Because as a baby, when you grow up learning English as a baby, it's really listening and then output what you hear. So listening is really, you have to really care about what is being said when you're listening, because sometimes it could be hearing people and you're not listening to them. You could be just consuming, going in one ear and you're passing through the other ear. But you have to care about your subject matter. In my opinion, you have to care about your subject matter to really listen and process it. And even if you don't care, you could find ways to care. You could find ways to say, right, this could benefit me in the future somehow. And for procrastination, now that is hard. I really struggle with procrastination, and especially in these days in technology coming about. And this is one of the interesting things. Like, I heard a philosopher say that one of the most biggest lie in humanity is that we have no time. And he says that because we have, the people who really didn't have time is our forefathers, because they had to work every day, and not only work, but they had more time they had to take more time for their work, because they didn't have automation, they didn't have washing machine, they had to wash it by hand and stuff like that. So the fundamental lie is that we don't have time. And I know people will be busy these days, but the people who really didn't have time is our forefathers. But at the same time, we are the ones who complain more about not having time than they, which is interesting because the thing about procrastination is not that we don't want to do something, but we have so much options now that setting our priorities straight becomes harder and harder the more options we have. So I would say to limit procrastination, you have to limit the options. And people wouldn't like to hear that, especially kids, because one of the things you don't like is when mommy take away your PS4 or something like that. But what you really have to do, and especially for parents, you have to limit the options. Sometimes you have to give them time for play and time for work, but you have to limit the options that they don't become so overwhelmed with things to do that they misplace their priorities in life. So,
I wanted to make a okay. Before, yeah.
I have a question for Alex Simon. So you're in Form 5 and you've been through most of the subjects. So my question to you is like, what subjects you like to see like strengthen, like things like you want to see certain subjects improve, or what new programs you want to see come to the school, like in the coming years?
Well, my first thing that popped in my head was music, because when I came into Form 3, I actually had music as one of my options in Form 4. But somehow, I'm not really sure the reason why, but they removed it. And I probably would be playing the piano now if they still had it, you know. But music is one of the options that I want. Well, is mandatory, music is allowed in some other countries, like in the Caribbean, but here in Grenada, as a subject for CXC, I want to see music. And another subject I want to see come into CXC is robotics, because I see there's an interest in younger people in robotics, and I think that could probably most likely limit unemployment if there's more jobs related to robotics or more opportunities related to robotics. So, yeah, that's two subjects.
And a personal question, like, how do you, like, you're in Form 5 and you're doing all the subjects, like, how are you finding time to study, like, effective studying?
Well, it's in one word, sacrifice, because a lot of people want a lot of things, but they don't want to do the things required to get a lot of things they want. So sometimes you have to really sacrifice the enjoyment. You have to, well, my father has called it delayed gratification. So you wait. So sometimes you have the shortcut. You have to limit the enjoyment now, so when you be successful later, you could enjoy it more. So that's why you have to do, limit the enjoyment now, and then delay the gratification so you have more time to work now, and then later you can enjoy it.
Young Simon, I admire your prowess and your progress in school, and you've done tremendous in your endeavors. But I hear a lot of academic stuff. I'm curious about what were your extracurricular activities you're involved with, and uniform bodies, or I don't know how many you have now. I know 58 years ago we had about 6 of them in the school. So were you involved in any of the uniform bodies or any adventurous groups in the school to help you to get where you are?
Well, I joined Scouts early on, but I dropped it. What I do personally is more so devotionals, like read my Bible and study the scriptures. But what I also love to do is painting. So sometimes, I have a newly Instagram account with with paintings and drawings that I post up regularly. And sometimes I'm not in any heavy curricular activity now, but as a prefect and as a head boy, sometimes I have duties to do, like clean up, clean up the garbage and stuff like that, and make sure the boys are in class at times, or check the higher forms, the other forms, to see if they're doing well and stuff like that. So it's not really curricular activities I do, but as my role as a prefect and head boy, I do these stuff.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on a few points because they've come up repeatedly. And perhaps you could start with the student-centered learning versus the teacher-centered learning. And the description of it, in that in days long ago, the teacher and the chalk and the blackboard was how it went. And the teacher told you and you wrote and made notes and then regurgitated it back. And that's what I was making reference to when we spoke of learning by rote. That has changed completely. And it is student-centered learning that must take place. They would not find their way in a globally developing world like it is unless they were able to problem solve and look at issues and so on. So I want to strongly agree with the persons who raised it, Dr. Bishop, Burnaby, and yes, and others, another gentleman over here and so on. That is the whole thrust that should have taken place, that transition, a good while ago. And hence my comment on the 30 years behind. I think that's a wonderful projection. It is plenty more than 30 years. Let me share an experience with you. I suppose, the figures would indicate that. But recently, and I'm going to say recently, about a year ago, I was in Victoria and meeting with people, which I love to do, on the ground and just chatting about things. And this is a particular young lady sitting outside the market, a young woman in her late 40s. She had 3 children. And she didn't see. I was saying to her, we were talking about the fact that she had this allowance and she couldn't afford to do all these different things and so on with the children. She wasn't worked up, distressed, or otherwise. She was just chatting. And I said to her, you don't think that if you went to the hospital, it would be nice to have a sheet on your bed and a pillow to put your head on when you're sick? And she told me she hadn't thought about it really. She hadn't really realized. Yes, she guessed it would be. But this is something she never thought about. So her level of expectation is so low. That's what I mean when I'm talking about empowering minds. I had to say to the group who were with me what we could do here. I questioned her more, but there was no consciousness at that level in 2021 in our country, Grenada. She just thought that you went, and if you have lucky enough to have a relative, they bring a sheet, and that's how you lie down on the bed, and relatives will bring food. This is her concept in this day and age. And I had to say to the group, what we have to make sure is that the children get the bus fare and they get something to eat so they can continue to attend school, because I don't think there's much we can do about that generation at all. And that's what I'm saying. When you look at the level of empowerment, you never get a response like that in Barbados or even St. Lucia, largely because I've tried it myself. I've been intrigued with our own thinking and our own levels and so on. So our people haven't gotten even that level of consciousness of what we should be asking for and depending on, and interested in getting our education empowerment of people's minds up to that level. The other thing I wanted to say is that the boys' underachievement, I don't know if you remember that, but public fora were things that we had and need to continue to have just like this. But George, I don't know if you remember when we had the session, we used to do a series of them. That one was in the Deluxe Cinema in Grenville and in Goa. We had it in 3 places. The 3rd place was down at SGU. The public fora are key in keeping people thinking and listening to each other. But we tried, you know, but we as a people must be more responsive than that. You know, in other words, we must get up and say, well, where the public fora is, or come, let's talk about. But we don't tend to operate that way at all. We tend to sit and let it be done unto me instead of, you know. In terms of the history, the program is absolutely essential. For the first time, I got to find out who Fedon really was during the program. I mean, I know Fedon. I know Fedon's camp. I had hiked there. I know he's a Grenadian. And he created some fracas about a year, about 100+ years ago. That's the sum total of it. I mean, I was totally empowered in seeing the history of who he was and the sort of struggle it would have been that has made us who we are today. So, you know, the point is well taken, but it is we, the people, that have to try and get these perspectives put in so that our children become empowered and understand from whence we came so we could know where we are going, you know. The wide variety of subjects is something that's very, very important. You hear the music? When I was in the Bahamas some years back, they had their core subject as music, English, and math. And I said to myself, these people are crazy. They don't really, yes, I said at first, they have funny, they've lost perspective of things. We in Grenada have programs that could get our children into all universities. 6 months later, I say, you know something, we're way behind, you know. A young man in Form 3 came to me one day and said, you know, miss, you have all this knowledge about chemistry and about this and that, because that's what I was teaching at the time. And he said, I could hustle your salary in one night in Paradise Island playing the piano. Just so he said it. And I was pressed as a teacher to say, well, Lord, how are we going to justify that? So I had to tell him no, that money is not everything in life. And that in actual fact, I got great satisfaction out of teaching the chemistry. But he meant to say, you know, are you relevant? Are you and this college relevant to our existence? And this is something that we have looked at and understood. They just understood it well ahead of us and could therefore, you know, bring in other subjects. We did introduce, as you are aware, the performing arts. You know, the music that should be in the school, indeed, we should have percussion bands. What happens to the musicians amongst us? What happens to the Michelangelos amongst us? They sit by the wayside in Victoria. And nothing happens to them. They brought people to me, before I was minister, who, the lady was from Canada, and she was volunteering, and she said, this is an artistic drawing, the likes of which deserves to go on to a degree. Because this boy is clearly talented. Where is, as I say, is a Michelangelo sitting on the side of the road. So we got to wake up and put in all of these options for students and for all these different things to happen. The art, you know, is the one I'm sharing. My own son, myself, painted the backdrops for all the performances at Cambridge, and he's not an artist. In The Lord of the Rings, they were putting on a production, and they were surprised. He's never been trained. But I went at Presentation College, and I asked that he sit art, because he was painting all over the walls of his bedroom, although his subjects were science, chemistry, math, physics. And this is the thing that happens. But he goes up there, and they spot the talent, and they turn around and say, what happens to the Grenadian students who have these talents, and we are not addressing it? It is we tired talk. Time to get action in the system. Lennox Honeychurch himself estimates 100 years. He said in 100 years' time, you'll be exactly where you are now because you're not making the steps moving forward. And he says you're way behind, and I believe it, way behind. So we need to
I see,
quick now.
brother. I see, brother. Yeah, you might have watching the time frantically. I think
Yes.
we overstay. We welcome this. We scheduled to have left here at least by 8:30, the latest. I think we gone way beyond the time. Minister, we may have to bring an abbreviated outcome, shorten the program to meet the requirements of the gentleman over there and so forth. I didn't want to cut Sister Franca because she's the person who I know does keep us alive all the time, even when we want to be dead. So, may I interject now and say to you that we have certain announcements which I want to put before everybody run away. The session today, great. We have what is called our commemorative coins on sale, $100, whether you could show them. They have a limited amount available now, and I showed it to 2 persons and they wanted a lot. We also have stickers for the car on sale, $10. Support the 75th anniversary bar and food stall at the Cricket, which would take place on Thursday at the member stand. Next, 75th anniversary table tennis competition at the PBC, 29th and 31st. 2 days? Lovely. So I would be there, 5 to 8 is the time. And please don't forget to register and donate to the 75th anniversary. We need funds to cover the expenses of these activities. I have a good, long-standing and outstanding friend who had volunteered to deal with some of these things, Raphael Mousinwell. So he's going to help you to set the pattern for all of these events that are coming up. He came specially for this event, so we have to identify and promote him. While I want to bring closure down before we go, brother, I too want to tell us as we celebrate yet another milestone, I want us not to forget, we past, present, and students to come, we owe an overwhelming duty to the PBC to promote it, to protect it, and to preserve the good name of PBC for generations and generations to come. 75 years is long, but we are still going strong, so we have another more to come. So if I may, bring the curtains down on this evening proceeding to extend a hearty thank you to all of you who participated. I noticed the participation could have been even more. People had to stop them in tracks, and even if I didn't stop them, they know I mean, don't say nothing. So thank you so much again, brother, and our young upcoming PBC students. We are there with you, encouragement. We have a few, they left. Keith Bridgman is one of our outstanding, long-standing students who is here visiting. And a number of them are here for the cricket, so we should materialize a lot of the things that we want to do. Are we going to close in prayer, brother? Because this is how PBC operates. Pray to start, pray to close.
So once again, thanks to everybody for coming out. This was a wonderful session. I want to, in a very special way, thank the Chief Education Officer for not only coming, but spending the duration of the time, and also the District Education Officer. She was also here a while ago. Has to travel all the way to St. Andrews, but she came anyway. The chairman of the 75th Anniversary Committee, Mr. Adrian Francis, for the work that he and all the other committee members are doing, and then the staff members who are here, office staff, the students who are here, and everybody. Thank you so much for coming and making this evening such a great success. So Lord, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for watching over Presentation College and all schools and all persons who are involved in education. We pray in a special way for safe passage home, and for all the other activities that are coming up for the 75th anniversary of the college. So as we go, may the Lord bless us, in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Have a safe journey home.